We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. This won't matter to the audio-only listeners, but we're recording on a Tuesday again in the afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That's all my fault. I was thinking...
It's 100% not your fault, because I was going to do it anyways.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. It all worked out just swimmingly. No, I had a day off of work on Monday there, so I was thinking, oh, that's okay. I'll procrastinate over the weekend and whatnot. And then, we got a lot of complex questions, and it was kicking my butt trying to put together the topic list. So I begged of Tom that we record today instead.
Which was fine because a couple things. First of all, as I reported last week, my kid was sick.
Yes.
He is still sick.
Really?
He has mono, apparently.
Yeah, because that's highly unusual to be sick that long.
Yes, his fever seems like after they put him on antibiotics yesterday. We found out about the mono on Monday or Tuesday or something like that. So we have, since then, Friday, I guess, no, yesterday, she took him back to the doctor because his cough still wouldn't go away.
Right.
And they put him on antibiotics. Since then, I think his fever is finally gone. I think.
Okay.
But he is, still coughing a lot and very tired. He's got some sort of infection on top of it, so he's very sick.
Man, oh man.
On top of that, Lee's in town.
Yes.
So Lee Overstreet, who's sometimes on the podcast, subs for me every once in a while. He is in town. I met him and his lovely wife last night. They came over for dinner. I made them a scrumptious dinner, and Lee took pictures. And he's like, I'm going to take pictures of your gear. I'm like, don't take pictures of my gear. It's all such a mess in here. And I felt bad because I was going to recalibrate the whole system just to make sure that, because the bass feels a little light, but it was fine. And they watched Guardians of the Galaxy 2. They've never seen it before, so it was nice.
That is a very good showcase of a theater.
Yeah. It was nice. There was good surround effects in there and stuff like that, especially the part where Quill is out trying to find some tape, and it goes into the surrounds and stuff like that. So
it sure does. It
was nice. It was a nice little thing. I'm going to see him again tonight. We're going out to dinner again tonight.
Oh, great.
So this time I will not have to cook.
All right. Well, I hope your son feels better very soon. I'm sure everyone else does as well.
I hope so as well. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/avrantpodcast. YouTube.com/avrant. Why no podcast? Because.
It's short.
I don't know why I did the podcast for everything else, enough for that one. You can contact us directly, rob@avrant.com. His Twitter is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom @avrant.com. My Twitter is @avrant_Tom. And that's because when I did that, I think it was avrant_Tom, avrant_Dina. I think is when we first did those. So that's why it's like that, because I thought that we were going to be an institution, but instead I was institutionalized. So that's the contact information. Please send us your questions. We answer each and every question in this podcast, whether you want us to or not, sometimes.
Yep.
Usually.
The order they were received.
Usually.
Yes.
Yeah, usually.
Almost always.
Almost always. So today, I know we started a few minutes late, Rob, because of technical difficulties on my end, but we will be ending at 3 because I need to leave here. Okay. I need to walk out of this house at 3 p.m.
Well, we got piles of questions, so let's not dilly-dally then.
We will dilly-dally as much as I feel is necessary in order for me to get into this podcast. So we want to start by thanking our listeners of the week. We always thank our listeners of the week. The easiest way to support, not the easiest, but maybe the quickest way to support the podcast is to do so financially. And that's how you become a listener of the week. Go to www.avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and it'll take you to a PayPal donation site that you can use to transfer money from your PayPal or your credit card. They will take your credit card. They don't mind. So we want to thank our donors, our latest donors for this week, Stephen, Jaremy, and Joseph, for their donations. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yeah, Stephen, Jaremy, Joseph, thank you very much for those donations.
Those go into our coffers to help pay for all the stuff my wife says I owe her, which apparently is numerous these days. I don't know what I did, but I've spent some money on something. We also want to thank our 61 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon is a service where you can sign up to monthly, have a donation, I guess, an extraction from your bank account into their account, which then gets transferred somewhat over to us, some of it over to us. This is a monthly thing, so the minimum is $1, the maximum is infinity. So someplace in there you can find your magic number, and once a month you will be donating to this podcast, and we thank our 61 patrons.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant podcast, and thanks so much to our 61 patrons.
Also want to thank our other listeners. How could somebody else be a listener of the week? Well, very easily. They find somebody to support the podcast and they tell us about it. So one person that's, oh yeah, he's already on here. Dang it. Jason let SVS know that we were the reason for his PC-2000 subwoofer purchase. He says that after years of waiting, he finally replaced his old Yamaha subwoofer, and his reaction is OMG. And for those baby boomers out there, that's oh my God.
Yes.
Or gosh. I don't know. I guess it depends on your religious affiliation. He's got a big open concept living room, and he wound up setting up the PC-2000 to about 70% on its volume dial. When he played Interstellar, his floors shook, things fell into his sink in the kitchen, and his toes went numb.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yet the sub itself remained very clean, so he says thanks. And you are welcome, sir. And thank you to SVS for... I guess, partial paralysis on your part.
That's right. Well, congrats, Jason, and thanks for letting SVS know we sent you their way.
James, House of Cards C, who's one of our listeners, he's the one who made the mouse pads, which there was still a box here I need to send to you. Dude, you've got to help me remember to do this. You've got
okay.
It's
I'm in no rush, so I'm not
all I have to do is tape it closed.
Okay.
And then take it to the place and mail it. That's all it's ready to go. I just haven't done it. And I also gave one each of the mouse pads to Lee when he was here last night. So, and I also... every time someone comes over, I'm like, oh, look, here's a demo disc. Why don't you take this one and take this one and take this one? I've got these demo discs from
$300 value, that mouse pad.
There you go. James, House of Cards C, he's the one that made our AVRant mouse pads. He's offered to put my new company's Fearless Mobile Climbing logo on something other than mouse pads. I don't know what it's going to be. He asked for the logo. I sent it over. He said he liked the logo, so I was happy about that. I like the logo too. But
cool.
Yeah, I chose it. So thank you, James.
Yeah, thanks, James. It's very nice that you're supporting Tom in that way.
Chris is one of our listeners, and he has an Insteon hub that he would like to give away. He actually offered to give it to us so we could talk about it on the podcast, but no, we don't want it.
We're not going to put it to good use, so we might as well give it to someone who will.
That's what I told Lee, and Lee was like, oh, that sounds like fun. I would love to play around with that. I'm like, Lee, you do not have any kids. So, yes, it sounds like fun to you, but to me, it sounds like a whole lot of hassle for me to have to explain to my wife why suddenly the home theater doesn't work anymore. So, I can't do it. So, yes, we are going to give it away to somebody on this podcast. I don't know how we're going to do that yet, but it's going to be something.
All right, we'll figure out the giveaway at a later date, but thank you to Chris for the offer. We appreciate it.
Yeah, so if you're interested in Insteon Hub, get your little typing fingers ready to type something or something. I really don't know what we're going to do. In the news, according to Audioholics, Dolby has sent out a new mandate to all of their licensee partners with new restrictions regarding upmixing. According to the new mandate, they'll no longer allow DTS Neural X or Oromatic upmixing to be applied to any Dolby signals. If the original recording is encoded in a Dolby format, the only upmixer allowed would be the Dolby Surround Upmixer. While they're claiming this is for quality control, they're still going to allow receiver manufacturers to apply their own proprietary DSP listening modes to Dolby signals. So it appears as though this is more about boxing out DTS and Aural rather than actually caring about the quality of the sound. So that sucks. We should hopefully expect to see more DTS-X mixes then on discs.
I guess. I mean, they might decide to do the same thing. When the Denon AVR-X, the first Atmos receivers came out, the first ones that also did DTS-X, this was the case out of the box, where if it was a Dolby signal, you could only use Dolby Surround Upmixer. If it was a DTS signal, you could only use DTS Neural X. But then they later firmware updated that to allow cross-pollination of the upmixers, which Yamaha and Onkyo had allowed all along.
Right, sure.
So now it's like kind of taking a big step back to the way things were originally on Denon AVR-X. So yeah, it's a little bit strange. That's not great for those of us who use front wide speakers because the Dolby Surround Upmixer never puts any sound into the front wide speakers, but the DTS Neural X Upmixer can.
Right.
So yeah, not quite sure what's going on there, but I guess that's what they're gonna do.
We'll find out. Somebody needs to boycott somebody to make it not happen, I guess. Sony's X700 Ultra HD Blu-ray player got its Dolby Vision firmware update. It did?
Apparently. That's what they said.
I didn't know this. And it's currently the only 4K Blu-ray player that works with Sony's Dolby Vision TVs, but it's also hilariously poorly implemented. You have to manually activate Dolby Vision output. It does not auto-detect Dolby Vision discs or streaming content. And then if you've manually activated Dolby Vision output, everything gets a Dolby Vision flag added to it. So even SDR, even standard definition content gets your TV's Dolby Vision mode. So that probably looks like trash.
Yeah, that is not how you should implement Dolby Vision. I mean, again, going back to like Apple TV 4K when it first came out, if you put it in Dolby Vision mode, everything was in Dolby Vision mode. So
they'll fix this. This is a firmware update. This is
you would, but why not get that done properly before you send it out?
You know, I'll be honest with you. My wife was just called me from work. She's like, "Oh, my day." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Oh, we sent this report over and I don't know what happened, but like a whole section of it was missing." And like, you know, it's a copy paste error. And that's probably what happened here. Just somebody did something and it's like an earlier version or something. Who knows?
So far, if you have any of the other Dolby Vision capable Ultra HD Blu-ray players, they still won't output Dolby Vision to a Sony Dolby Vision television, because Sony's Dolby Vision implementation is all software based, so it's up to the players to be updated to be able to do it. So the Oppos and the LGs and the Philipses haven't been updated yet. So this Sony will work, but it's all manual and it doesn't auto-detect and it's horrible. So
all right, well, we'll see how long it takes them to fix it. Apple announced that the Apple TV 4K will get Atmos audio output with the tvOS 12 update coming this fall. So you know, hold on your hats for that one. They've only confirmed Atmos support for movies streamed from iTunes so far, and it's Dolby Digital Plus based version of Atmos, not the lossless version. But they said that any movies that you already bought that get new Atmos soundtracks will be upgraded in your library for free. So that's nice. You know what? I'm going to be dead honest with you. I feel like that's not nice. I feel like we shouldn't be thanking Apple for doing the thing that just seems like it doesn't cost them any money. You know what I mean?
No,
it's not like they're going out of their way. It doesn't cost them any money to do that.
No, but it's still better than forcing you to double dip, like if it were a disc
Okay. So basically, not being evil is being nice, because that's not the same thing. They're just not doing. It's like, I have an apple here I'm not going to eat. I will leave it on this table, and if you eat it, that's fine. That's not being nice. That's just not throwing away perfectly good food and being a jerk when there's hungry people around you. You're just leaving it out there. It's not like you're cutting it up and making an apple turnover with it. That's not what they're doing. They're just like, well, you know, we're just going to update it all rather than having to update some of them and then make you buy it again. And
they could have made you double dip. That's all I'm saying.
All I'm saying is I don't think that's what happened. Anyways, so no official word yet about other streaming apps like Netflix, Amazon, or Vudu, and lossless bit streaming was never mentioned either, so it's unclear whether the disc backups played via Plex might be able to send out True HD or DTS HD master audio through the 4K, the Apple TV 4K.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it can, because then the Apple TV 4K will become my favored separate box for doing all this stuff, because if it can do Plex and it can send out the full lossless bitstream audio via its Plex app like the NVIDIA Shield currently can, then that's going to be the box. That's going to be the one. But this does make it very interesting. If you're super duper all about quality, you're probably still going to buy Ultra HD Blu-rays.
Sure.
But now you're getting a whole gigantic library of movies on iTunes that have Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. Yes, the Dolby Vision video is more highly compressed, and the Dolby Atmos is the lossy version, not the lossless version. So if you're a quality snob, you'll still get the discs, but this is pretty compelling now, right? Pretty compelling in my opinion, especially like if it's a movie that you want to see but you don't care super duper about and you don't really want to buy the disc, like that's a pretty good option.
Yeah.
In the fall when it arrives.
Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I really like streaming.
Yeah.
Like, I really like it. To the point where last night we were watching Guardians of the Galaxy 2 with Lee, and I walked out the room because I had sick kids, I had dishes to do, I had stuff going on. So they were watching here, and he comes out, he's like, the movie froze. I'm like, okay, whatever, go in there. Not only the movie froze, the whole player turned off.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, what is going on? So I took it out, and there's a smudge on there. So I cleaned the smudge, put it back in, and it plays fine. I'm like, that happens more often than I'm comfortable admitting. You know what I mean? That happens more often than I'm comfortable saying out loud. And there's a part of me that thinks, you know what? I'll take the lossy audio and the not as good picture just to know that it will play all the way through. But then again,
Well, sometimes streaming has hiccups too.
Vudu has hiccups all the time with me, but Netflix never does. So, whatever.
Well, I will say I kind of wish at this point that I had redeemed all of those like digital copy iTunes copies from all the many discs I've ever had. I never did. I never bothered with it because I just backed up my discs. So it doesn't really make a difference. But it kind of would have been cool. Yeah. They would have been upgraded along the way.
Some comments from our listeners. David, a very sad update. David is the fellow who's been struggling with the very slow JVC projector HDMI handshakes that happen anytime he changes channels on his DirecTV box between a 720p channel and 1080i channel. After the HD Fury Vertex failed to solve the problem, Rob suggested via email giving the much older Dr. HDMI device a try. That didn't work either.
Yeah.
So other than swapping out either the source or the projector, there doesn't seem to be a solution. So it looks like somebody's going to use a projector.
So that old Dr. HDMI, that was an EDID editor. So it does the thing where if you had a source that was expecting to be connected to an HDCP whatever version display, you could sort of fool the source into thinking that the display was allowing that signal type. But it doesn't work the other way around, which is what we need here, which is convincing the display that it's always seeing the same source. It works the opposite direction. So that didn't work either.
All right. Well, sorry, dude.
I know.
Roger sent us a whole bunch of detailed information about oversampling. Mostly, he wanted to point out that CD's 44.1 kilohertz sampling rate necessitates a brick wall low-pass filter at the top since you only have the frequency range from 20 kilohertz up to 22.5 kilohertz to completely roll off the signal. Otherwise, frequencies above the Nyquist frequency will be captured, causing aliasing in the audible signal. Oversampling to 192 kilohertz, 96 kilohertz, or even just 48 kilohertz is a far less aggressive filter can be applied, reducing the chances of any audible filter artifacts or unintentionally capturing frequencies above 20 kilohertz, as aliasing in the signal. I have no idea what any of that means.
I mean, we've talked about some of this stuff in previous episodes, but that is going back a long ways. So when we talked about oversampling last week, these were some details that were left out. And it is primarily, like I was saying, the reason to do it is if you're going to manipulate the signal in some way. Primarily.
Well, I know, but these things being captured, that's at the recording stage,
that's
not
at the
capture
playback
stage.
It can happen after the digital to analog conversion stage as well, though. Filters need to be applied all over the place.
Right. But when we are the disc itself, all that stuff, by the time you get the disc, it's not like
on the CD itself, none of those frequencies exist.
They don't know, it's just not there. So you can't up converting it at that point, which was the thing that we were talking about.
That the player would do, but it's when it's converted it into the analog domain and then maybe you're applying some filtering or tone controls or whatever to it. That's the reason to do it, so that you can manipulate the signal. Then you can move all the noise up into the super what's above what you can hear. It's not supersonic because that's fast.
Oral, super oral. I don't know.
Anyway, ultrasonic. That's the word I'm looking for. Into the ultrasonic frequencies that are above what we can actually hear, and then you can apply a filter to it. And he's correct, right? If you have a greater sampling frequency, then you can apply a less aggressive filter.
But taking a signal, a disc that has 44.1 kilohertz sampling rate on it, and then up converting it to 192, doesn't do anything.
No, I mean, it doesn't gain you anything. No, this is only if you are manipulating the signal, potentially polluting it with extra noise and that type of thing. This allows you to filter that off and bring it back down to 48 or 44.1 without having added any noise to it. So just a detail that we left out. If you want to learn a whole lot more about digital audio in general, I mean, Wikipedia is actually a great resource. There's tons of information if you want to peruse it, and we could spend a whole podcast just on that, so we won't.
Yes. Luke. Let's get to the questions. In the land of computer monitors, high refresh rates, 120 hertz or 144 hertz, adaptive frame rate syncing, AMD FreeSync and NVIDIA G-Sync, and 1440p resolution, sometimes called 2.5K, are quite common. But flat panel TVs and especially projectors don't seem to follow suit. So, he asks, I guess, 1440p monitors are less expensive than 4K monitors, so why aren't 1440p flat panel TVs being made and sold at price point lower than 4K TVs? How confused do you want the American and just not America, but the public to have to deal with this? I see no. Well, I mean, you're talking to a guy who didn't think there was a reason to have 4K to begin with. Okay, so having 2.5K does not in any way encourage me to go out and get it. I just don't see a reason for it, at least from the consumer level.
Primarily, I mean, so on a computer monitor, it makes sense that you want every extra amount of resolution that you can because we're worried about text on PC monitors, and you're very close to the screen, so you don't want any sort of screen door effect or being able to see individual pixels. So the more pixels you can throw on a computer monitor, the better, and then your computer can generate your images at whatever resolution. But on a television,
they are completely adaptive. I mean, like if you can take whatever the image that you're looking at, and provided that it's got the resolution involved that it needs, it can scale that to anything that you've got, to a certain point, to where it starts to blur naturally. So, TV signals and our content has to be at the resolution of the TV in order for it to be a 1-to-1 pixel mapping, or you're asking the TV to start scaling things.
That's just it. Yeah.
If you want, let's put it this way: if you said we're going to start putting out all of our discs in 16K. It's all going to have native 16K resolution, and then you can put it on whatever TV you want. Well, the 16K can come down to whatever resolution your TV can do a lot more easily than taking VHS. What was VHS? 480? No,
it was 320.
320. Yeah. Take 320 and scale it up to 4K. That's going to be blurry. The other way around is okay, but that's not what we're talking about. We've got now, two types of content, basically 1080p and 4K.
That's right.
So your TV has to be somewhere in that range. And
it'd be nice if it were one or the other. If you had a 1440p flat panel, then every video thing that you're watching on that television has to be scaled.
Right.
So why would you do that? Why wouldn't you choose either the lower HD resolution that a ton of content it is, or 4K resolution, which now a growing amount of content is in? 1440p, no video content is produced in that resolution, so it doesn't really make sense for a television.
And the second question he asked, why isn't the same thing happening with projectors? And it's the exact same answer. There's no real need for it.
I do believe there actually are some 1440p projectors, but of course they're data class projectors with horrible black levels and colors that wouldn't look right for video at all.
That's business class stuff where you're actually using it with a computer.
With a computer as your only source. That's right.
Yeah. So remember, because what we're talking about here, yes, there's no reason why you couldn't make those displays, but if you make those displays, you need either content or a source that either is at the right resolution or does the scaling for you, generally speaking. Yes, the TV itself could do the scaling, but why would you buy that and have to have it scaled when you could just buy a 4K TV, or a 1080p TV, which would also scale? And there's lots of them, and it'd be cheaper. So there are sub $1,500 4K projectors now, but they seem to be sacrificing on black levels, wide color, and lens quality to hit that price point. Meanwhile, there are some pretty darn good 1080p projectors at low price points. So do they only care about disc resolutions, 1080p and 4K, or could a 1440p resolution class fit in between? I mean, like Rob said, there's already some out there if you really want to buy one.
But they're not aimed at video reproduction. So it's the same thing. If you're worried about video reproduction, you're going to worry about video resolutions. So, you're going to make the 4K projector. Could somebody make a 1440p projector? Sure, but they're probably going to sell even fewer of those to video files. Right. And the projector market is already a tiny subset of display sales. Right. So what are you going to make? You're going to make 1080p projectors, and you can make inexpensive ones that are pretty darn good for video now because they've been around for a long time, or you're going to make a 4K projector and charge more for it. It doesn't really make sense to make a 1440p video projector.
The fact that you're the first and probably only person that's ever asked this question should tell you how big this market is. It might come along
more because of what he comes up with.
So any reason to think projectors might support a 144 hertz or other adaptive sync technologies like variable refresh rate stuff anytime soon? This is an interesting question too, because sync rates, or this the number of times that image flashes on the screen, it's kind of a set thing. You're either going to get 60 hertz out of your content, generally speaking, or 24, right? And that is the number of frames that are there. So if you do anything other than one of those frames are going to be something that your projector made up, or your source made up in some way.
Or you're just going to have judder.
Right.
Yeah.
So could they? Yes. Will they? Oh, no. Why would they?
Well,
I don't know
the
any
variable
difference where they
refresh
would.
rate, that's a maybe. I mean, that's part of the HDMI 2.1 spec, is having
Sure.
variable refresh rate anyway. And that is primarily about console gaming. Xbox One X, which we're going to talk about in a moment, can do the variable refresh rate thing. So that, to me, is a maybe. I don't think we're going to see it until we start seeing HDMI 2.1, actual HDMI 2.1 spec type of things, and that's probably for projectors a couple of years away. I could see that. The 144 hertz is an interesting one, because that has its origins actually back in 3D, because that's 6 times 24, so it was 60 frames per second per eye in 3D is how you arrive at a 144 hertz display. That doesn't really make much sense for everything that we're doing now, that we don't really care about 3D anymore, because 30 frames and 60 frames don't fit evenly into 144. You'd want to drop that back down to 120 anyway. So this is, again, a gamer thing where they're like, the more frames, the better on my computer monitor. 144 has to be better than 120, right? Because it's a bigger number. So yeah, a lot of this is coming from the gaming side, but I do think we'll see variable refresh rate on projectors, but probably not for a couple of years. HDMI 2.1.
Right. And whenever we start talking about this gaming sort of stuff too, it's again an even nicher market than a normal market. So
lots of console gamers out there, though. So.
There are, but how many people are buying? How many even console gamers, even hardcore console gamers, are buying projectors specifically so that they can?
Well, he actually asks about that.
All right. Well, we'll get to that in a second. Anyways, last time I watched my kids, did I talk about this last week? They were watching a Minecraft video, a guy playing Minecraft, and he kept jumping as he was going. Instead of just running straight, he jumped the whole way, and I almost threw up. I mean, I've never gotten motion sick in my theater before, and I was like, I have got to get out of here. I'm going to puke all over this floor. This is just, I had to go take a nap. I told my wife, I'm like, I'm sick. I'm lying down. I'm out. Xbox One S and X are now supporting variable refresh rate output, and Samsung is implementing variable refresh rate syncing on some of their flat panel TVs. This all seems to be aimed at gamers, since adaptive syncing doesn't have much application for any sort of video playback. But a huge image would be helpful for gamers too. It's not always the case, but let's go on. So is there a technical limitation preventing this from working on projectors, or is it just a lack of will to market projectors to gamers? And I've talked about this on the podcast as well. I just mentioned it. But Clint, whenever he gamed with me online, he would have to go take Dramamine. Because he could not do a first-person shooter and not get motion sickness.
And he was on his projector,
He was on his projector. And I disagree with you that a large image is helpful. Some people may think so, but and it seems to make sense. But the reality is, you kind of want you want a large enough image in gaming so that you can see everything on the screen very clearly, without having to move in any way, shape, or form. A really large image can make it so that you have to move your eyes, and you don't have time to move your eyes and refocus in gaming. You want to have everything right there where you can see it. So I think there is an optimal image size, and I don't think that the projector is necessary to get that optimal image size for gaming.
Yeah, I don't know if how much they're interested in. I mean, how much are they interested in marking projectors full stop?
Yeah,
because it's a very tiny market to begin with, and then saying, oh, we're going to specifically market projectors for gamers. That's an even smaller subset of that. So I think there is I don't know if it's a lack of will. It's a lack of cost benefit ratio to market projectors full stop, and then specifically to gamers even more so. But like I said, I think we will see the variable refresh rate. It's just going to take a couple of years, I think.
Yeah. Luke uses a 27-inch 1440p resolution FreeSync monitor, and he thinks it's great. Hence all the questions. So if LCD panels are manufactured in huge sheets that are cut into individual panels, why can't a similar display be scaled up in size for a minimal increase in cost? Or is he oversimplifying the process in his head? Yeah, dude. I mean, it's not like you can take the LCD panel that are being manufactured and just say, okay, well, instead of having it this way, we want it this way. That's a completely different factory.
That's many different pixels per inch. All the electronics that go into it have to be the correct size for the panel and resolution that you're making, yeah, it is quite a bit more complex than that. I mean, could you make larger 1440p resolution
is the
display?
answer to that
Sure.
question.
Yeah, of course you could. But it's a decision of how many are going to make, how many are going to sell, how much time on the factory floor are we going to spend retooling our machines to make that size at that resolution. So it goes back to all the things we said previously.
Yeah. So he'd love to have a larger version of his monitor for under $1,000, and he has no need for smart features built in. Why isn't the market catering to gamers like him? Because there's not enough of you. That's why.
And there is a 4K monitor, 65 inches for under $1,000, or $600 from TCL now. That's a 60 hertz display, so maybe he wants 120. Well, Vizio has you covered there. You could get a 55-inch P series Vizio with a 120 hertz panel. Are they doing the variable refresh rate? We don't know yet. They haven't said if there's going to be any variable refresh rate on this year's, but probably on next year's. You know, the 65 inch is $1,300. So, but that's 65 versus 27. That's a huge difference to get a 120 hertz panel and 4K resolution, which is even more than your 1440.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't think we're going to see 1440 for televisions. It just doesn't really make any sense there. The sizes are there. The prices are pretty low. Getting the 120 hertz panel is doable. Samsung is going to have some that are edge lit that do the variable refresh rate as well to get the price down. So I think they are catering to people like you. There's just a little bit of, the computer monitors are always going to have advancements before televisions. Because computers are capable of outputting a whole lot more things than consumer electronic devices. So I think that's the lag.
There's less restrictions.
That's right.
You don't have with a TV.
They could do lots of stuff with DisplayPort before HDMI was able to.
Yeah. Nick says, obviously we are fans of multiple subwoofer the multiple subwoofer research done by Tom Welti and Sean Olive from Harvard.
Todd.
Did I say what did I say?
You said Tom. All right, I heard Tom.
I feel very confident that I said Todd, but that's
I might have misheard you, but that's what I heard.
But after the multi-sub white papers were published, it's not as though they completely stopped researching the subject. There's an interview over at Secrets of Home Theater that mostly discusses the multi-sub white papers that we're already familiar with, but then they go a bit into Todd Welti's more recent sound field management research. And Todd has posted some more findings on the what's best form, including talking about the double bass array that a German group of researchers came up with that goes back to Floyd Toole's original findings. In the double bass array, they used Toole's original quarter length, quarter width placement for 4 subwoofers that mathematically should produce the fewest room modes. But instead of having the 4 subwoofers on the floor, which is impractical for most setups since all 4 subwoofers would have to be well out into the room, they put all 4 subs on the front wall, 1/4 of the way in from each side wall, and a 1/4 way in from the floor. And 1/4 of the way in from the floor and the ceiling. Then they duplicate that setup in the back wall, so 8 subs in total. So, what? So they are 1/4 of the way into the room from the side walls, from the floor, for your bottom subs.
From the bottom and from the ceiling.
And then 1/4, there's 4 subs up front though, right?
There are 4 subs on your front wall.
Right.
Let's say your room is 12 feet wide. They're going to be 3 feet in from each side wall, all 4 of them.
Right.
And then there's going to be, let's just, for math, say it's 12 feet high as well. It's going to be 3 feet down from the ceiling is going to be 1 sub, and then 3 feet up from the floor is going to be the second, and then same thing on the other side. So you got 4 subs on the front wall, and then another 4 subs on the back wall. Same setup.
They say this creates a plane wave, which is basically identical to the response you would get outdoors with no walls around whatsoever. Tom Welti compares this double...
I heard Tom again.
That time I said Tom for sure. Todd Welti compares this double bass array to a sound field management solution. What are our thoughts? Well, if I read that correctly, the basics, his thing was like, technically it's better on paper, but
I don't even know better. I mean, it's replicating the outdoors but indoors, but it also only works in a not only rectangular room,
but it has to be absolutely symmetrical. It
but
has to
perfectly
be perfect.
Acoustically rectangular, which is like if you have one window, the whole thing falls apart because that is not the exact same reflection as the drywall wall that is opposite.
The impracticality of the entire thing, having your subs 3 feet off the ground, okay. maybe.
Sure.
But 3 feet off the ceiling, nah.
Well, I mean, I even mentioned the same idea of like a sub in every corner, and literally every corner, meaning again 8 subs, because also the upper corners as well as the lower corner. Similar idea, and again, it would have to be an acoustically perfectly rectangular space for that to mathematically work. Now, that's a wonderful experiment to just see if the theory holds true in practice. That's a wonderful thing to do, but in real world practice, what he's doing with sound field management, and hopefully we'll get to the questions that are dealing with that. Sound field management is the brute force approach of you put in however many subwoofers and you place them wherever they fit in your room. And then you measure every single one of those subs at every single seat in the room. And then you either do the math and crunch all the math, having measured them one at a time, to put together whatever scenario you're looking for, which is flattest response possible at just one seat, or most uniform response possible across all seats. Whatever it is you want to do, you can crunch the math. Or you can do what they're actually doing with some of their Arcos setups in their JBL synthesis systems, which is multiple microphones measuring at multiple locations, measuring multiple subs, simultaneously and in real time, adjusting one sub at a time in its delay and its gain and its EQ per sub, and doing that all in real time. That's the full sound field management he's talking about, so that you can see in real time what gets you the most uniform and flat response across all of the seats that you're measuring all at once. That's a tremendous amount of processing power. It's why it's not readily available to the public. It's not something you can download or buy, but you can have a JBL synthesis installer who's certified in this whole process come in and do that for you. It's a lot of money, but it works. Of course it works.
Curtis has often heard us say something along the lines of, we want to get you down to 20 hertz, or we want you to get a sub that can genuinely play down to 20 hertz. How exactly do we determine if a subwoofer is capable of doing so? Do we just go by the CEA 2010 measurements? It depends on the subwoofer manufacturer. Some subwoofer manufacturers, I just flat out believe. I've had enough of their subs be tested individually and externally, and have them either measure exactly what they claimed, or their claim was conservative, which is kind of SVS. SVS is really accurate, and I've actually had it. I'm trying to think of the companies that have been a little bit conservative with their measurements, but I think HSU sometimes goes in that direction. So if HSU, or she, I don't remember how to say it.
They just say shoe on their website. So
they or SVS, Power Sound Audio, Rhythmic. I just kind of believe them at this point. They've all tested. They've all been shown to perform as predicted.
Yeah, if they say our sub is -3 decibels at 19 hertz, I mean, maybe it'll be 19.2, or maybe it'll be 18.8. If you measured it yourself outdoors, but it's going to be darn close to what they specify. Close to that. Now, other companies, specifically ones that are large enough to have a marketing department, I don't believe anything, and I add 5 hertz to anything that they claim. Yep.
And you can kind of see how they're written sometimes. Like who is it that has the DIN?
That's Paradigm. They always use the DIN.
The DIN measurement. You're like, shut up, that thing's useless.
-10.
Or they don't say how the measurement was done or something like that.
Yeah, or they just say frequency response, but they don't give you, is that plus or minus 3 dB? Right. Is that plus or minus 10 dB? We don't know.
And a lot of times we're going on our past experiences too.
Yes.
So like some companies, major manufacturers in particular, will come out with something. I'm like, yeah, I remember when you came out with a subwoofer a couple of years ago and you said it played down to 20. What you meant was it played down to 30. Right. And then it technically moved at 20, but nobody could ever hear it because it was way too low. So
now, if they do post CEA 2010 measurements, those are pretty reliable.
Yes, they are.
It's pretty hard to screw that up. You can just follow the instructions on how to do it. Now, you do have to be aware of, are they referencing it to the microphone being 1 meter away or 2 meters away, which hopefully they state, and not everybody does. So you got to be a little bit careful on that. But those are pretty reliable, but not everybody does it, especially a lot of the big speaker manufacturers. Yeah. They don't post CEA 2010 measurements. So
why would they?
We're combining our
consumers are not interested.
Yeah.
They are interested in buying a sub that will match their speakers.
Yeah.
And they get that sub that matches their speakers. And if they do a little research And I mean, the smallest amount of research will show you on subs, like, what's a good subwoofer, and you'll find 20 hertz. So it's just like having the larger watts measurements on your
everything's
receivers.
100 watts per channel.
It's got right. No, you're just going to cheat it right up there, even if it's into 4 ohms.
However, we have to fudge all the other parameters. We're going to get to that nice looking number.
We're going to get to that nice number, and that's the same thing with subwoofers with major manufacturers.
Yeah, we're just combining our actual experience with. We do look for the specs. We look for that. What is the -3 decibel point? And for the ones that we know we can trust, we pretty much go by that. And for the ones we know we can't trust, we ignore that too.
Yeah. Andrew from Facebook. A couple of weeks ago, we went over Andrew's speaker setup, and most of our suggested changes and tweaks had to do with his subwoofer placement and setup. He tried following our advice, and he says, "Holy crap, what a difference." Yeah,
Yay.
It's almost like we know what we're talking about over here. He moved the sub that he had behind his sofa. Oh, this is the guy whose sub was shaking the sofa too much.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, not too much, but he had it one on the front wall and one right behind his sofa, but then he has quite a bit of room behind his sofa.
Yeah. So he moved the sub that he had behind the sofa to the rear wall while leaving his second sub near his TV on the front wall, and now the base is more uniform. So they're mirrored.
They are actually across the room from one another now. So,
And it still shakes his sofa, so no loss of tactile sensation. He manually level matched both the subs and wound up with their volume dials much lower, so that Odyssey is no longer setting the subwoofer trim level to -12, which is what it was doing before.
It was.
And on that front, he just wants to ask, during his Odyssey setup, it had instructions on his screen to set the subwoofer's volume knobs to 50%, so that's what he did. And that's how he ended up with the -12 trim level settings. So if it really isn't the best way to set the subwoofer's volume knob, why have the instructions printed that way? Because you have the most room to go up and down. And they have no idea what room you're in or what subs you have. So set it halfway, and then we'll see from there. You're supposed to it's not supposed to be set it to 50% and then walk away. It's supposed to be set to 50%, and then there's supposed to be something on the screen that shows you that you're nowhere near 75 dB and to move it up or down on the volume.
But to be fair, the instructions are not printed that way, either on screen or in the manual. And if you're using one of the versions of Odyssey that is not sub EQHT,
that's true,
where it has you on screen in real time adjust the volume knob until it reads 75 dB on the on-screen readout. I mean, most AV receivers, especially any that are a little bit older, they didn't have that. It gave you the instructions exactly as it said. Okay, set your volume knob to halfway up, then run the thing, and it doesn't tell you anything after that. Right. Here's what you should adjust. So no user blame. No. But that's why you end up coming to people like us who can give you a little bit more information. I mean, they're trying to make it as simple as possible because they're scared of scaring away consumers from using the thing. So they're trying to give the most broad, hopefully applicable, easy to follow instructions that they can. But in a case like yours, you discovered it's not really what you should do. You need the volume knob on your actual subwoofers to be set lower so that you're not going
in your
beyond
room with your subs.
That's right.
Those same subs in a different room could be you have to turn them louder.
Yeah. Or you could have much less capable subs, and then you'd have to turn them higher to make it work. So yeah.
Kris recently upgraded to Atmos, and he went with 4 of the Outdoor Speaker Depot MK650 in-ceiling speakers that we've often recommended. His receiver is a Denon AVR-X3400H. Isn't that the one I have?
It is the one you have.
Okay. Yay. And when he ran Odyssey, the auto setup set the crossovers for his Atmos speakers to 200 hertz. We've been saying that recently that 120 hertz or maybe 150 is as high as we would go when setting a speaker crossover. So what are our thoughts in this case? I have to be honest, I don't really think it matters. But to be honest with you, I just don't think it matters at all. Because they're Atmos speakers, and I just don't think that matters. But that is very high.
That seems unusually high for those speakers, which makes me suspect one possible explanation.
Wired out of phase?
No, I was wondering if maybe you told it that you have Dolby Atmos speakers as opposed to just
overhead speakers. Yeah, because the Atmos speakers are the ones that fire up off your main speakers. And then
they're the ones that are meant to bounce, and they are supposed to have a 200 hertz crossover. That's what they're designed to do. So I wonder if maybe just check your settings, and if you notice that in your speaker configuration, any of your speakers are actually labeled as Dolby Atmos speakers. Now, you would think that's what I'm using these speakers for. I want Dolby Atmos speakers, but unfortunately what they're talking about, Dolby Atmos speakers are the bouncy speakers. You want to tell it that you have no Dolby Atmos speakers, but you have 4 overhead speakers. And they're top fronts and top rears or whatever the positions might be. So that's what I suspect, because those speakers shouldn't trigger a 200 hertz crossover. They can definitely play lower than that. Those
I would think they would go down to the 80 at least, right?
Oh, yeah. So I think that might be what it is.
All right, I'm trying to log into my thermostat so I can see what temperature it is in here.
You and your thermostat.
It gets hot. It's Florida.
You should take Kris's Insteon hub so that it can automate the whole thing for you.
I've got the Ecobee. It should be automated itself, but whatever.
Nope.
Okay.
Manual control. Just instead of walking over to the thing on the wall, you do it on your computer every time.
I know. It's set correctly anyways. It's just hot in here. Kris on Twitter. Kris's living room is 16 by 11, but then it's open to his kitchen, dining room, and a couple of hallways. So infinity square.
Unknown amount of air, yes.
He's had success using 3 subwoofers, 2 in his rear quarters and 1 up front, but they are Samsung 10-inch subs that definitely do not play down to 20 hertz, so he's looking for an upgrade. Okay, before we go on, do not expect to have the same success when you change subs. Do not assume that you have found the perfect placement, because your subwoofers are not playing. I almost want to go subwoofers. There's air quotes I'm doing there. Are not playing down, or not playing many of the hertz that you are looking to get with your new subs. So once they start playing those hertz, you may find out that your room is not, your placement is not at all optimal. But we will see. So his total budget for subwoofers is about $2,000. He's looking into the idea of putting a PC-2000 in each rear corner and using those as his surround speaker stands. That way he gets more bass output and his wife stays happy with the look. Okay, well that's not
so yeah. So I talked to him a bit about it on Twitter, and he's like, "Nope, that's what he wants to do." Because I was like, I don't know if I'm super on board with the idea of the 2 subs both in the rear corners, and that's just going to be it.
Why is this thing so purple? What is with the purple?
I don't know.
Is that around the TV? Is that a screen? What is that?
Oh, the other picture. Okay.
Yeah.
There's another picture of the front of his room. Yeah, that looks like purple around his TV. It does. I don't know.
I'm a little confused as to what I'm seeing here. Anyway,
in any case, at the back of the room. Yeah.
Yes, he wants to have 2 of the subs at the back of his room, and he wants to put his surround speakers, which are currently near the ceiling.
No, those are his top middles. So he's got you can see right in the corner there is one of his surround speakers. So he's doing a 5.3.4 setup right now.
Oh, I see it now. It's right next to the lamp.
Yeah, right next to the lamp. Yeah, and you can kind of see the other one poking behind the
I see it now.
lampshade on the other side there, what would be his right side. So yeah.
Okay, with his current 10-inch subs, he found that he needed a 3rd subwoofer up front in order to achieve even sound and bass. His TV is above the fireplace, and there are built-in shelves to the right. One of his 10-inch Samsung subs fits into the space at the bottom of those built-in shelves. That space is 13 by 20 by 16. 13 wide, 20 deep, and 16 tall. That actually does sound like quite a few subs, I know.
Sure.
So, could he, say, put an SB1000 in there and still get good results, or what would we recommend? I would not recommend an SB1000.
And I don't know if that'll fully fit. So it is listed as being 13 inches wide. So if that space is exactly 13 inches, that could be one heck of a snug fit. So I don't know. And that is the smallest out of like the subs that we recommend on a regular basis. That is definitely the smallest one. Everything else, I looked up the sizes of like everything else that we consider to be a small-ish sub, and they're all at least over 14 inches wide, other than the SB1000. That is the smallest one. Yeah.
I am... Okay, so... I almost want to say buy 1 sub, try it out, and see how it works by a second.
Well, he's going to get at least 2 because he wants stands for his 2 speakers on the other side.
Speakers, right?
I would definitely give it a try, 2 PC-2000s, because now you have full variable phase control that you didn't have on these other subs, and maybe some experimentation yields some pretty uniform bass just with the 2 of them.
It's going to be hard to even get back there to turn that knob with the... everything in the way.
I guess you could upgrade to PC-4000s and use the app from your seat. It's a heck of a lot more money. It went well over $2,000 if you got a pair of those.
Okay, so I think Rob and I are going to be in agreement with this one, but we're going to say get the 2 subs and try it before you decide, before you in any way decide to buy another sub and decide that it's already going to be perfect inside that little thing.
Because I certainly don't mind dual PC-2000s in here. That's not the issue.
That seems perfectly
It's
reasonable.
just whether or not you're going to be able to get uniform. So I would try it with just the 2 of them first.
Yeah.
Now let's just go on the presumption that that doesn't work and he does need a 3rd sub. My thought was maybe you get a 3rd one and you put it in that space that's to the left of your fireplace. It's not going to perfectly fit in there, but there's something of a corner created by the partial wall and the left edge of the fireplace.
Right, where the bellows thing is right now to the left of the TV. So there's a half wall there, and it's a little hard to see if this fireplace actually sticks out. I think it's an optical illusion, but it seems like it sticks out a bit.
Well, I think so, because you got the shelves on the other side that are definitely forward of the wall.
And it looks like it's forward of that. So yeah.
So maybe another cylinder just stands itself up there to the left of your fireplace.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
Yeah, that SB1000 is just not... It physically fits in there. It's not going to keep up. It's not going to keep up, and which means that it is SVS, but so it will not break, and it will not... It's unlikely to make a lot of unwanted noise down there, though it could shake itself into a wall. I mean, it's going to be real tight.
I mean, the only other thought is to spend a lot more money and maybe get a JL Audio, right?
Are they even that thin?
Well, you can get like the 8-inch one. The 8-inch one will fit in there.
Yeah, but that's gonna. Well, jeez,
it's gonna be a lot of money for an 8-inch sub.
Yeah,
just to make it fit. That's the only reason to do it.
Right. I say get the 2 and then resign yourself to playing with the phase knobs to begin with. And decide. Don't give up on that. Like, because that is your best.
Exhaust all possibilities with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is your best option right there. Because after that, it's going to be a bit of a hassle. He already has front heights and top middle speakers mounted up high on his front and side walls. He'd like to stick with a 5.3.4 setup, though we're suggesting 2.4 setup. But his wife would also like a pair of speakers outside, and they've gotten used to their Onkyo receiver that has Chromecast built in. While Onkyo has made several receiver announcements recently, they haven't said anything about new flagship 11-channel models yet. So you just wait to find out what they have to offer later this year. Why can't you just buy a Chromecast? What does he want? I
mean, he's an Onkyo fan, so I don't have any beef with that.
I don't either. I mean, if you really want to wait for the next Onkyo, knock yourself out, dude. There's nothing wrong with that. But
not only that, I mean, the current ones they have out there. So this would be like the RZ, 3100.
Yeah.
I think that's the one that has 11 amps built in. So I think the idea would probably be to wait for the new ones to start trickling out, and then the price drops on the 3100. Because feature-wise, I don't see what a new one is going to really offer over the 3100.
It's going to be incremental at best. It's going to be stuff you probably don't care about.
Yeah, so I think that would be the way to go. So yeah, it'll be coming. They will have.
Yeah.
Onkyo is just like Denon, is just like Yamaha. They release new receivers every year, whether they really need to or not. They just do. Yeah. So yeah, that'll be coming. I think that's a fine idea. If what you want are 11 amps built in, so you can power 9 things inside and another pair outside, all from one receiver, then yeah, the price drops on the 3100 will be coming along later this year.
All right. Earle got a pair of SVS SB16 Ultra subwoofers. So those are the sealed box 16 monsters.
Yes.
That's a 16-inch cube.
They're nice, though.
They're very nice. He put one in the front right of his room and one other at the rear left. He's been so impressed with them, he's considering getting 2 more. But if he does, he wants them to get even more output, so he's considered stacking them.
Woo!
Why?
I don't know.
Why?
That's what he wants.
Okay. First of all,
you must have a heck of a room.
I was going to say, why do you need more output? I mean, are they not? Are you got the volume knob maxed on these things?
I guess so.
Is that the problem?
I don't know. This is what he says he wants.
Okay. All right.
Got to take you at your word, Earle.
All right, Earle. You got some.
We're surprised, but we're taking you at your word.
I gotta say, this is not normal. Usually, you would say, "I want to return these and get something that has more output," and I would say, "Okay, we can find you something that has more output than that."
BB 16 Ultras.
I was gonna say you could. Well, maybe he doesn't have the room.
They don't have the room. They get bigger in every dimension, whereas this is only getting taller.
That's right. So he's read that if he stacks a pair of identical subs, he'll get 6 dB more output. But since he'll have 2 stacked identical pairs, will he get 12 dB more output? I think that doesn't sound right.
Nope.
But it's close.
But we can work through it. So let's say you started with 1.
Right.
And let's just say for the sake of argument that 1 gave you 100 decibels of output, right?
Right.
Now you get 2 and you put them diagonally across from each other. That would give you an extra 3. So now you're at 103.
103, right.
Now let's say you go back to 1 and then you stack a second 1 on top of it. That gets you 6 decibels more output. So now you're at 106.
And across the room, you're going to be...
you put an identical stack across the room, that gets you another 3.
Yeah.
So now you're at 109. So what you have right now in this hypothetical would be giving you the 103 scenario. That's 2 subs across the room, gets you 3 decimals more output than just the single sub. So right now you'd be at the 103 number. Then you'd be increasing everything just by 6 decibels. So you'd be at 109.
And there's other addition things that go in there because you have them in the corner, so you can get some corner loading and stuff like that. But just from we're just talking about from the perspective of how much more output you're getting from the sub themselves by having more than 1. Now all the other stuff, that the room gain and stuff that goes on, that's on top, and it affects all the subs equally. So
this is the same thing as replacing the 2 subs you already have with 2 brand new subs that play 6 decibels louder than your current one. The 2 of them together don't equal 12. It's just the whole thing went up by a headroom of 6.
Yeah. So I gotta admit, 6 decibels does not sound like the price of 2 additional SVS.
4 times more power, though.
I am not saying that it doesn't. I'm just saying. All right. So what would be the best way to wire all of these subs? His processor has 2 subwoofer outputs, so should he split each output and feed each sub from his processor, or should he keep the same connections he has now and then daisy chain each stack? The easiest way to do it is the 2 that are stacked on top of each other, just use a Y connector from that one output and keep their volume knobs in exactly the same spot.
Yeah, you could do that. These SVS subs do have outputs of their own that just pass along, so you could just daisy chain them. That will also work absolutely fine.
But you're going to have to adjust their volume knobs so that they are identical at all times.
Oh, yes, whatever is in your stack, those 2 subs within that stack should always have their volume knobs at exactly the same amount, which is quite easy to do because these give you a whole digital readout and everything. It's not just a fully variable analog knob, so it's quite easy to keep their volumes at exactly the same. But yeah, whether you daisy chain them, which is you totally could do, or you just stick a Y splitter somewhere in the wire lane, that doesn't really matter. It's going to be the same thing. They're getting the same signal.
He's got 2 sub outs anyways, right? So one sub out is going to be powering one corner or feeding one corner. Now either you put a Y splitter at the receiver and run 2 cables across the room to that corner, or you feed it into one subwoofer and then you output from that subwoofer and input to the other subwoofer. Doesn't matter. It's the same difference.
Yep.
Doesn't really matter. But the important thing is that you're adjusting both volume knobs equally on both subs every time. They got to be exactly the same. So how will his auto setup handle this? Will it just treat each stack as though it were a single sub? How do you make sure everything is level matched? Well, that's what the volume knob thing is about. Yep. And yes, it will treat that as a single sub, and that is the appropriate way to do it. And as long as you keep those volume knobs at exactly the same point at all times, you will not have a problem. Yeah,
truly just imagine that you have 2 subwoofers instead of 4, because that's effectively what you're doing. You have 2 subwoofers that happen to have 2 drivers and 2 separate volume knobs each, but just keep everything exactly the same as though it were one sub. And then the process is exactly the same. The way you level matched your 2 subs, you do it again. It's just now you have to make sure that you turn 2 volume knobs the exact same amount with each adjustment.
Yeah. Lastly, ask, where is Austin's dual PB16 Ultra review and setup video? And the answer is, we don't know.
He did email me a couple of weeks ago to apologize for his absence and say that he has been in contact with SVS, so at least they know that their equipment hasn't disappeared on them.
That's important.
That is the most important thing to us at this point. He said he is still going to get the video out there at some point, but the answer is we don't know.
I swear, man, it's so weird. I've done this so many times and I want to make it very clear that I in no way am angry or whatever with Austin. This is not, I have very little ego invested in any of this stuff. It does irritate me that SVS on some level is probably blaming me specifically, since it was my idea, but us in general as well. But this happens all the time.
People to reviewers, yes.
This happens all the time, especially brand new reviewers. And like Gene and Clint, when I first started working with them, over at Audioholics, they were very hesitant because they send gear to somebody for the first time and it disappears into their house for years. They stop returning calls and everything, like things that they had done for free on the forums, reviews they had written 10,000 word reviews on the forums. Suddenly, it can't put out a 500 word.
It's a different thing when it's an actual job that you're doing. Yep.
So I don't blame Austin. I'm not mad at Austin. I still consider him one of our friends, and he's still a friend of the podcast. He just got, it was a big task. I thought it would be fine, and it overwhelmed him a little bit. And plus, he had other life things that went on and all of that.
Many.
So I understand. I understand what's happening. He moved, and all sorts of things happened. So there's a lot of stuff that went on at that same time. But still, I'm glad that SVS is going to get their speakers back, because that's the most important thing at this point. We will see this video. I swear. I will. I don't want to say I will not stop doing this podcast until I get that video, because then Austin can I'll have to do it forever. But he will. I am confident that we will see that video someday, and it will be amazing. Hopefully, Steve moved into a new house. He's got the go-ahead to knock out a wall to create a dedicated 12 by 28 by 9 foot theater room. He plans to mount a flat screen on one of the 12-foot walls and then have a motorized projection screen that comes down in front of it. Okay. It's nice. What brand of motorized screen should he buy, and if he can work out to a good compromise where a center speaker is placed so that it isn't too low for the flat panel, but also isn't too high for the projection screen, is it necessary to get an acoustically transparent screen? Put center channel on the ground on a little stand. That is the solution to that problem, and then you don't have to worry about this. I mean, that's for me. That's what I would do. It is unlikely to be the case that you're going to be confused. Your brain will very easily put that center channel information into your flat panel or into your projection screen. I would just put it on the stand.
I mean, usually if the top of your center channel is about 2 feet off the ground, that works for most things.
Yeah. There are center channel stands specifically for this.
Absolutely.
I got one. SBS.
Yeah, and they're often like 14 to 18 inches tall. Yeah. And then you have like an 8-inch tall center that's quite common, or maybe a 10-inch tall or something. And that, if you put that on a 14-inch tall stand, you got a 24-inch top of your center speaker. So yeah, about 2 feet off the ground to the top of your center speaker tends to work.
I gotta believe that the flat panel is for casual watching anyways, so
or daytime or lights
on, or something like that. So if I would worry more about the projection setup than I would about the flat panel setup anyhow. So I think that's perfectly good. That's how I would set mine up.
At the same time, I would say with 28 feet, you probably have room for a false wall.
That's true.
Probably.
But then why?
But then the flat panel at the same time.
The flat panel doesn't really work in that situation. Unless you're going to hit the flat panel. Oh, here we go. The flat panel is flat to the ceiling, and then you press a button and it cranks it down.
Some people have that.
And it drops down in front of your projection screen. That's stupid.
No, I think this is doable. I don't think you have to have an acoustically transparent screen. What brand of motorized screen should he buy, he asks. If it's not acoustically transparent, what can he go for?
Oh, well, I mean, there's lots of them. But
there are lots of them. How much money do you have?
Yeah, that's a real question, though. What's your budget? Did he say
we don't
budget?
know. We didn't say budget, although some of the projectors he's looking at are pretty spendy, so I don't think it's
well,
a tiny
Seymour
budget.
AV would be like if you're going to go for something real super duper nice, I'd go with that.
It would, although mostly we want to get Seymour AV when we want acoustically transparent.
Right.
I mean,
there's doesn't Elite do this? And what is the other one? The Illusion Vision or whatever it is?
Illusion Vision, although they're actually more expensive in the States than Seymour is. I mean, if you can get a Seymour, because Seymour does have non-acoustically transparent screens as well, which are very, very nice. Yeah. So
tab tensioned though.
Oh yeah, they are tab tensioned. Yeah, go Seymour first. If that's too expensive, then go Elite, because people have had their problems with Elite. We know that.
Yes.
When they work really nicely, but people have had their issues with them. So look at Seymour AV first. If you decide that's too expensive, then you're basically going to have to look at Elite. There isn't really anything less expensive.
Yeah.
There you go.
He's thinking about either a Sony 285ES projector for genuine 4K resolution without any wobbling, or a JVC X990 for superior black levels even though it wobbles. Any thoughts?
I find those to be odd choices, and I wonder if there's a typo in one of those numbers.
I have no idea what any of these numbers mean. So
Yeah, because the 285, that is it's genuine 4K resolution, but that's their $5,000 projector. So it has a motorized lens, but no lens memories. I don't know if you'll need a lens memory. I don't know if you're
why would he need it? He's not talking about multiple.
Doesn't seem to be talking about multiple projection screen sizes, but it's doesn't have quite as deep the black levels. It doesn't have quite as, they got it down to $5,000, so they cut some corners here and there. The 385 ES is the one that has all the bells and whistles, but it's $8,000. So then in the JVC lineup, the one I normally point people to is the X790, which you can actually find for right around $4,500 these days.
Okay, that sounds
so
like
it's
the same price.
It's the price one that you would compare to the 285, and then the 990 is the supposedly hand-selected parts, but the specs are exactly the same as the 790. It's just like, ooh, hand-selected parts.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any
before
reason.
What we used was our feet, right? What other parts are there other than hand-selected? Somebody's got to pick it up at some point.
So I don't see any reason to spend like $3,000 more for the 990. So either I would go 385 in Sony, or I would go the X790. That's the one I would get. I would get the JVC X790.
All right, there you go.
Superior black levels, way more sensible price point.
It's a 7.2.4 Atmos setup. He already owns Superior and Veris Grand Towers in center. He already has an Emotiva XP-A5 amp, 2 rhythmic FV15 HP subs, and an Oppo UDP-203. Any reason you should avoid using any of that equipment? He's already well aware how big he already owns them. The FV15 HP subs are, so no need to warn him about that. He already owns all this stuff, so there's nothing here that I go, oh, it will not work in this room. All this sounds great.
Really nice equipment too. It's all really nice great stuff. Yeah,
I 100% approve. So he doesn't have surrounds, I guess. He just has the front three.
Yeah, that's all he mentioned. Yeah.
So he's considering either a Marantz AV7703 or AV7704 Pre-Pro. Thoughts? Get a receiver. Mm-hmm. That's my thoughts. My thoughts are buy a receiver.
Because you can still use that XPA5 amp with a 7.2.4 receiver, and then you don't have to buy another amplifier.
X3400H is for sure. Get that. Get that, and then power everything else.
Or if you just like the look of the Marantz, they've got their 7011 would be a great choice.
Yeah.
And then that can power your 6 other speakers, your surround backs, and your 4 overheads. No problem.
I don't see any reason for you to get a Pre-Pro in here. None.
If you're just like, nope, I'm going separates, I don't care what Tom and Rob say, there's very little reason to spend more for the 7704. Right. He even detailed, he's like, I looked it up, he's like, the only differences I found, sorry, who are we talking about right now?
I have no idea.
Steve. Steve is like, the only differences I found were eARC, and I'm like, yup. Oro 3D already built in.
Yep.
And I'm like, yup. And what was it? Oh, there was some like HDMI diagnostics or something around.
That's totally useful because HDMI's never screwed anything up.
So to me, there's very little reasons. If you're just like, I'm getting a separate preprocessor no matter what you say, then I would say get the 7703. I see very little reason to spend more for the 04.
If he goes for the Pre-Pro, he'll need more amplifier channels. Do not go for the Pre-Pro. Is Emotiva still the great deal they used to be, or is there a better deal to be had today? Should he go with an Emotiva XPA7? There's no reason why you can't go with Emotiva. I think Emotiva is a perfectly fine choice. Which you're going to be powering, though, because you've got 5 channels. Yeah, what you'll be powering are your Atmos speakers and your surround backs, which are going to take approximately 3 watts total.
Well, since he's got a 28-foot room, maybe he powers the surround backs with his more powerful one if they're way back.
That's true. That's
side surround, because his side surrounds it's only a 12-foot wide room.
Really, really close. Yeah. So you could do your overheads and your side surrounds with literally a clock.
Wow, maybe something a little nicer.
A little bit more power than the clock. You have to hand crank it every once in a while. So
if you were going to get an XPA, why wouldn't you get an XPA 6 and save a little bit of money? Because you don't need 7 more amplifier channels. You could get away with a 6, but you don't even need that. Right. He does need 6 more amplifier channels. So what? Just the A700?
Yeah, something real.
Sure.
Yeah, something real.
The A700 be fine.
Fine, that's fine. He would like for all the remaining speakers, surround backs, and 4 overheads to be in wall and in ceiling. What brand models would we recommend? RBH.
Oh, I was going to suggest Aperion since he already has Aperion.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I always forget Aperion has in-wall speakers and in-ceiling speakers.
They sure do.
I never remember that. Okay, Aperion or RBH. Those are my suggestions.
I would totally go along with that. Yeah, so Aperions are $150 a pop. Whether you go for the in-walls or the in-ceilings, they're $150 each. It's pretty reasonable. They're going to match the speakers you already have really nicely. And no reason to avoid those. And RBH is very, very neutral, would totally work. So yeah, I agree.
So could he actually go for 8 identical in-ceiling speakers and use 4 of them as the surrounds and surround backs? No. I'm going to say no. No, you cannot, sir. And they're just going to be too physically close to each other. You know,
it wasn't
especially
entirely
surrounds.
Clear to me whether he was being like all 8 actually in the ceiling, or if he just means using round-shaped speakers in the side and back walls as well.
Well, I'm going with identical in-ceiling speakers and saying,
definitely don't put all 8 in the ceiling. Don't do that.
Because even if you did surrounds and then top fronts and top rears or something like that, they're still gonna, it's gonna look like I connect the dots up there, but they're all gonna be too close.
But let's say he was thinking round speakers on his side and back wall. I guess if that's the look you want, there's no real reason not to do that.
There's nothing that says that you can't. I'll put it that way. I think it's weird, especially when there's in-wall speakers and a lot of times in-ceiling speakers in particular are meant that, they assume that they're going like with attic above them, so they have sort of
they're deeper.
They're a little bit deeper than your in-wall speakers, which are meant to be in a wall.
Good call.
That would be my concern about putting an in-ceiling speaker in a wall. But if you can and you really want to, I don't think it matters. I think it'll be fine.
But we're mostly saying go for in-wall speakers and then for in-ceiling speakers.
Yes. He asks, is there a best in-ceiling speaker for Atmos, or will just about any in-ceiling speaker do? He could get a deal on some Klipsch CDT-5800 in-ceiling speakers, but would they play nice with his Aperion towers and center?
It would have to be a deal because on Amazon, they're $400 each, or $300, something like that. $300 to $400, way more expensive than the Aperions, at least on Amazon.
Okay, so is there a best? Let's answer that first. In the in-ceiling speaker for Atmos, yes. The best ones are the ones that make noise of any kind whatsoever.
I'd like slightly better than just literally making noise, but
not much though. They don't have to be much more capable than just farting out some noise up there. I don't think that the Klipsch is a great idea, and it's not because they won't. That they won't, they have some sort of sound that will be different than the appearance. I think the problem is level matching all your speakers together. You're going to have these Klipsch speakers that are a lot more efficient.
I mean, those Klipsch in ceilings aren't terribly much different from most other speakers. But they have them for they were $399 each. They're $335 each on sale right now. I see that's each. It's $300 a pair for the Aperion ones that we know.
Well, let's say that he has a friend that's a dealer or something like that.
Yeah,
right. For half price or something like that.
It's still the same price.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't do it. I mean, I would be worried about their sensitivity and stuff like that because Klipsch speakers are meant to be playing with Klipsch speakers. So plus your Aperions are going to be 14 feet away from you or something like that on the front wall. And yes, they're on their own amplifier, but to level match everything might be problematic, especially since those Klipsch are going to be basically right over your head. I would not, especially since unless you're getting these things for less than half price,
right?
Then I would go with the Aperions or the RBHs.
I just go with the Aperions either way. I don't think the price is going to be way off.
Steve is comfortable installing all of the audio gear, running any low voltage wiring, handling acoustic treatments, and doing drywall and trim work himself. He plans to hire an electrician for when he adds some outlets to his room, and he might decide to hire a professional calibrator for his projector after it's installed. But is there anything else where he should definitely hire a professional installer? Well, if you're comfortable doing all of that stuff, first of all, I don't think you need to hire the calibrator. Let me be honest with you.
Questionable.
That's a questionable expenditure of money. You could probably get away with just I'm just going to set it to cinema mode and I'll see you later, guys. No, I mean, not unless you want 2 rows of seats. But if he's comfortable doing drywall and trim work and all that stuff, he should be able to build a riser.
I mean, I would certainly. He talked about knocking out a wall. Make absolutely sure that's not a load-bearing wall.
Well, clearly,
I'm assuming he has, but
yeah, one would think.
But make absolutely certain of that.
Afterwards, though.
If you are doing any framing, like you didn't mention wanting to do framing, so if you are doing any framing, that's definitely if you're going to touch the HVAC in any way. definitely hire a professional to do that.
Soundproofing, maybe, if you're worried about sound transfer.
I'd almost want to do the soundproofing myself. I wouldn't trust a contractor to do soundproofing, but HVAC for sure. So HVAC, electrical, the things that you would definitely want to hire a professional for those.
Yeah. William was sent our way by someone posting on Reddit. This is literally the first time that has ever happened. I've never remember anybody ever talking about Reddit with us before.
That's why I threw that.
Hey,
in.
Reddit.
I
How's
thought
it going?
You'd get a kick.
Reddit. Okay. William lives in Canada. So here we go. Rob, this is you. Mm-hmm. So he's looking for products that are available to him and will fit with his $6,500 Canadian budget. So $6,500 Canadian is, I believe, about $350 American.
It's about $4,000 US.
Whatever. He wants a 5.1 speaker package with an AV receiver. He hasn't auditioned anything in person. He says he's not an audiophile by any means and was thinking he really wouldn't be able to discern one good set of speakers from another. Sir, I will tell you right now, that is 100% not true. I have sat down people who have made the exact same claim, and I put two speakers next to each other and A-B'd them for 5 minutes, and they're like, I like that one better. It's literally all it takes. It is so easy to hear the differences. Anybody who can hear can do it. So he just did some quick searching online and came up with a Klipsch Reference Premiere 5.1 package that includes tower front speakers, a large center, bipole surrounds in their 15-inch subwoofer, along with the Denon AVR-X3400H Receiver. He likes the looks and it fits his budget, but before he pulls the trigger, he thought he'd double check with folks on Reddit and now us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm glad the Reddit people said something about this because, that's a good idea. His room is open to lots of other parts of his house, kitchen, dining, and basically the whole downstairs via the open staircase and the diagonal setup with his TV in a corner and his love seat and sofa diagonally across needs to stay. His current speakers are a home theater in a box that came with his TV. So those probably sound pretty good. And what started this whole upgrade idea is how poor the skinny little center speaker sounds. He'd also love to wall mount his surround speakers instead of them being on stands. He's open to having two subwoofers, and he plans on getting a large rug to cover a good portion of his hardwood floor. So if you are watching on the YouTubes, there is a picture, a diagram, it looks like here, and his couches. So one set is in the corner. That's where his TV set and his speakers, and it looks like his sub is all in the front corner.
That's right.
And then he's got a couch across from it on the I will call it the back wall. So it's not exactly straddling the corner completely. It's sort of it's in the corner, but across the room from it. So if it's on the left, the couch is on the right. And there's a love seat on the top.
It's a diagonal setup.
Anywho, so these are little B skinny speakers. So maybe we should take that into account. Mm-hmm. He's got a little TV stand thingy going on there with some sort of cable box maybe happening, and there's stairs going down, and there's kitchen, and wow, this kitchen is upstairs, or maybe that's a basement down there.
I don't know. Yeah, could be leading down to a basement or something.
I've only ever been in the house once that had the kitchen upstairs and like the living room downstairs. It was a servant's quarters for a farm back in California when I was living. My girlfriend's house was like that. All right, so so the main couch, it looks like on that back on the wall furthest away from the TV. Is that bias lighting or is that just a string?
Oh,
of
he's
LEDs?
got bias lighting behind his TV.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And then he's got the surrounds are in the corners, and his couch is right smack dab on the wall.
Yeah.
I hope that helped anybody who is listening to this understand. Basically, put the couch in the middle of your wall, okay? Then across from you, where the TV would be, scooted into the left corner. That's what the setup looks like.
That's right.
Is the Klipsch Reference 5.1 Premiere 5.1 speaker package plus the Denon blah 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 receiver a combo we would recommend, or is there a group of products we would recommend more highly for a setup? He just wants something that will last. Yeah, I'm not recommending those Klipsch's. Specifically.
I mean, honestly, I don't think those would be a bad choice
at
all. If you like the way they sound.
Right, and that's the thing. Well, not only that though. I mean, the problem I have with the setup more is that you have a receiver that you can't choose and a subwoofer you don't want. So with the
15-inch Klipsch Premiere Reference Premiere sub, that's not a bad choice for this space. That's a reasonable, slightly over $1,000 sub. I'd want you to get a second one.
Right.
So, I mean, that's not a terrible choice. I will warn you, I mean, he's got a subwoofer from a home theater in a box right now. Take 8 of those, form them into a cube, and that's the size of the 15-incher. Or that might even be a little bit smaller.
I'll be honest,
than
he doesn't look like he has a humongous amount of room in this room for big old subs either.
Not tremendously. So, I mean, if this were my room, I would be choosing something different than this pre-put together package. But if you went with that package, I'm not going to tell you that's a terrible choice. I think it's a pretty appropriate choice for this room. I just want you to make sure you really like Klipsch before you invest all this money into it. That's all.
Right. Well, one thing I'm going to suggest, just right off the bat, if you get 2 subs, and unfortunately your room is, while it's pretty easy to place 2 subs into 2 opposing corners, it is maybe not going to work because of all the open spaces.
It's not a rectangle that we're dealing with here, not at all. No.
But if this were my room, where your surround right speaker is, that's where I would put 1 sub, and behind my TV, I would put the 2nd sub.
Yeah, in the corner behind the television. And I would go for a couple of cylinders.
Yeah.
I'd go for a couple of SVS PC-2000 cylinders.
Absolutely. And I would use the cylinder in the right corner in your surround, as your surround right stand. Basically, I just put it right up there, put it on top. It's got the new one's got the wood tops on them, so
it does have the wood top on top.
So
yeah.
I would use it as a stand.
So you can get those SVS cells through both sonicboomaudio.ca and Electronics for Less. We already know he knows about Electronics for Less because that's where he was looking up this Klipsch package. Now, Electronics for Less actually owns Sonic Boom Audio, so it really doesn't matter which one you go with. But I would get your subs there. I'd get a pair of the PC-2000 subs, so that's taking up about $2,100 out of your Canadian $6,500 budget.
Oh, right. It's different. It's different. Yeah.
It is different.
That sounds expensive.
So with the 2 subs, and he's like, I'm not a super duper audiophile. Obviously, he's into surround sound. He's got this whole setup already, but he's not a super duper audiophile. He probably doesn't want to spend all day, every day tweaking the darn thing. Yeah. I would like you to get a Denon. I'm not going to move you away from Denon, but I would like you to get an X3400H. It's pretty hard to find a 3300H at this point.
Right, but that does 7 speakers, right?
It does 7 speakers. He only needs 5, but it has the dual subwoofer setup.
Yeah.
That I think is going to be a benefit here. Is it going to be the absolute most optimal dual subwoofer setup? No, but it's for the normal person, this is the way to do it. You can get that from Gibby's Electronics. They have the B stock directly from Denon, $700 for the 3400H. It's not too bad.
Pretty good. Yeah.
So that's really what I would get. And then I would stick with Gibby's myself in this setup. I would get some Paradigm Monitor series speakers. I think they're
going to be a lot more neutral than the Klipsch are going to be.
And what I like about them in this setup, because he's got a pretty good distance between his TV and seats. Yeah. The Paradigm Monitor series, they're not quite as efficient as Klipsch, but they're more efficient than... They're about 93 dB with 1 watt. Yeah. Whereas the Klipsch's are like 96 dB with 1 watt. So 93 dB is a fair bit. So I was looking at like KEF, for example, because KEF would be...
But KEF is way down like 87 usually.
They're like 86, 87 dB, which for most rooms would be probably fine. But they're a bit more expensive and they're not as efficient. The Paradigm Monitor series, they've got the nice efficiency. They'll play really nicely with that Denon 3400. And Gibby's actually has a 5-speaker package that I think is perfect with the Monitor 9 towers, which I like a little bit better because they're slimmer. And looking at the setup he has right now, I'm like, you don't have a ton of space to the left and the right of your TV.
He doesn't. That's right.
So I think a skinnier tower makes a lot of sense, which the Monitor 9, they use the 5.25-inch drivers, a whole bunch of them. So they give you a little bit skinnier tower. They give you the really nice Monitor Center 3, which has the tweeter above a mid-range, which you have a wide seating area. And I like that. I don't actually really like that Klipsch center very much. So, all in all, I'm going to have the links. So come to avrant.com. We're going to have the links there. And I would point you to the Paradigm Monitor 9's speaker package from Gibby's. I'd also get a 3400 from Gibby's and I'd get 2 PC-2000s from Electronics for Less.
I love the idea of getting a big rug on your floor. That's going to be a good idea too. Is there any way I can convince you to pull that couch off that back wall? Just like
or put something absorptive behind both of your seats, because you have some artwork up there already.
That's right.
And I'm like, could you replace those with acoustic panels? Now there is actually a place called Acoustic Panels Canada.com.
Oh, did you know?
So that
I haven't heard of that.
That gets rid of all the crazy, because honestly, if you buy from GIC or from Acoustimac, the shipping into Canada is like, it costs more than the panels themselves.
Right.
So that's tough to swallow. So even though the
Trade wars, jeez.
Even though the Acoustic Panels Canada panels look more expensive, they're like $90 a panel instead of like $55 or $65 a panel. But you got to remember exchange rate and shipping you're not paying for. So they actually do mention that they used to do art panels. Their link isn't working right at the moment, but I don't know if they can still do art panels or not. But if they do, give them a call. You could get some art printed on those panels. So if you could put just some absorptive panels behind both of your seats on those walls, that you have them. If you go with the package that I recommended, you still have money left in your budget to get that.
I like that package. I can get behind that.
Sure.
You know, one of the advantages of being in Canada, you got more access to all those Canadian brands that
we do
down here aren't quite as financially competitive with some of the other stuff that we have access to.
I like the neutrality and the efficiency of the Paradigm monitors.
And it could very well be, and I just want to say this, it could very well be that the Klipsch would sound best in your room.
Maybe.
Could be. But,
or that you just like them the most.
Or you could. But as us not having heard, being able to listen to your room, and you not having an opinion about any speakers whatsoever, it makes more sense for us to push you towards a direction of a neutral speaker, which if you have a problem, we then now know it's the room.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, because the paradigms are tell it like it is.
That's right.
Either you just don't like what you're listening to, or there's something wrong with your room if you don't like the way they sound.
Right, and the Klipsch, on the other hand, I'm like, they could interact with your room in such a way that they just sound amazing in there.
Good.
That could be the case, or it could be that it's hot garbage and there's no way for us to fix it. You shove a bunch of acoustic panels in there, you carpet the floor and the ceiling, and do all this other stuff. You're like, I still don't like the way they sound. Like, well,
you said the major
speakers.
thing you wanted to upgrade was your center, and I like the Paradigm Monitor Center 3 a whole lot more than the Klipsch Center, so I'll just put that out there.
So while researching, he started feeling a bit overwhelmed by all the specs for speakers and receivers. That's the problem.
Fair enough.
He took the step of emailing Klipsch. I'm sure that helped. And they replied that for the Reference Premiere speakers, he was considering he should get an amplifier that has a minimal maximum output. What?
A minimal maximum. So in other words, this amount or more as the stated maximum.
Of 120 watts per channel at 8 ohms. So he started looking at receiver. Why on God's green earth would that be the case?
Well, that would max out the potential output of those Reference Premiere speakers. You definitely don't need that much power.
No idea why you would ever need that much power.
I guess it's a safe answer. If you have this much, you'll never run out of amplifier power.
That is true, I guess, theoretically. So he started looking at receiver specs, but there are numbers from 8 ohms, 6 ohms, sometimes 4 ohms. The numbers are all over the place. Sometimes it says 2 channels driven. Sometimes it says all channels or 1 channel. What the heck does he actually need? Literally any receiver would be fine.
For Klipsch, with the 90s.
For Klipsch.
So, the figure to really look at on the speakers is going to be listed as either sensitivity or efficiency. And it's going to give you some number in decibels per watt per meter. So that means that 1 meter away with only 1 watt feeding it, this is how much loudness comes out of the thing. And like we said, the Klipsch are like 96. The Paradigm Monitor series are like 93. And then most speakers, like the Kefs, are like 86 or 87. That's how many decibels they can play with 1 watt. Now, granted, that's from only 1 meter away. So as you move farther away, you'll need a little bit more power to equal that amount of output. But yeah, honestly, if you just go with the package we recommended, we will guarantee that you are safe there. That's the easiest way to settle your mind.
Honestly, I mean, you would have been safe with the Klipsch package too.
Oh, you certainly would have.
Absolutely fine. And in fact, if you just took the Klipsch speakers and stuck them with everything else we said, without this, that would have been fine too.
Absolutely.
No problems here.
But you can run into an issue with say you got an 83 decibel output speaker and you're trying to power it off a 20 watt amplifier or something.
And you're
that
sitting
can be a problem.
3 meters away.
Yeah.
That could be an issue. This is not going to be your problem. So you came across electronicsforless.ca, and now we've also mentioned Gibby's. If he's looking to get the best deal, would it be worth calling them on the phone and trying to haggle? Where are you from? do people haggle in Canada? Because we don't haggle in America. We don't.
Honestly, it is worth it. Gibby's
really?
almost always will cut you a deal.
There you go.
Electronics for less. Not so much haggling, but they'll put together like a package deal if you're getting a bunch of stuff from them.
Sure, why not? I mean, to put it this way, it doesn't matter what country you're from or where you're shopping. Calling and asking for a deal will never result in you paying more. They're not going to say, not only do you not get the deal, but it's an extra $100 just for you.
I will tell you, it's absolutely worth calling Gibby's, for sure.
Yeah. Karl, it's a new question, finally. Karl shared an article addressing complaints that Solo, a Star Wars story, looks too dim at many movie theaters. Some people blame the choices of cinematographer Bradford Young, who openly talks about his enthusiasm for shooting in low light now that digital cameras can capture so much detail without the need for bright lighting. But other professionals blame the theaters, where everything is now so automated and no one is actually checking the calibration of the projectors. What's our take? I did not read this. I did not know this was here. I did not get this far down these questions. I've had a sixth son. Anthony.
So I did see Solo, a Star Wars story.
But don't tell me anything. Go.
I won't tell you anything. Honestly, I truly believe the issue here is that they reshot 70% of that movie in 10 months. They were 10 months away from release when Ron Howard was brought in to reshoot 70% of the movie, which means some of those sets are not so detailed, and they kind of shot stuff in a lot of shadows and a lot of grays and a lot of browns to hide the fact that they did not have time to build all these new sets. That's what I think is going on in this particular movie, because it did look kind of dingy and dark, but I'm like, yeah, there's a reason they're rolling around in the mud and not showing you any of the background right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can look at the perfect example is Justice League.
Sure.
Justice League was shot, all the Zack Snyder stuff was shot with the idea of a certain color palette. Mm-hmm. And when they switched directors and decided that all this dim, dark, grim, dark crap that they had been doing was not working, which is, what happens when your movie comes out and flops, but you're already filming the sequel because you think you're Peter Jackson and you're not. They change the color palette. You can look at that movie, and some scenes you're like, why does the costume look so bad? Why does that costume look so bad? You're like, it's because the light. It was meant to be shot in certain lighting.
And there was a time crunch on that one too when Joss Whedon was.
Oh yeah, I mean, we were watching Guardians of the Galaxy 2 last night, right? And the opening scene with Groot running around, the fight going on, and everything else. The very, very opening scene of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I look over at Lee and I said, and Justice League couldn't get Zach get
Henry Cavill.
Yeah, couldn't get his mustache off.
Nope.
Right? How? Well, it's because of time crunches and stuff like that. Now, that being said, I am 100% ready to believe that the theaters aren't calibrating and aren't paying attention to stuff.
Well, I was thinking,
I am
like,
100% behind that.
When we get to
too.
watch this in HDR, it's going to look a whole lot better. I was definitely thinking that.
Yeah?
Yeah, but still,
so.
there's plenty of shots where there just isn't detail, and I'm convinced it's because they just didn't have the time to build all new sets for all this stuff they were shooting. So,
well, yeah, this is not. I mean, there's so many movies that I just wish that like they rushed the theatrical release, and afterwards they would go. Just like, all right, before we put it out on Blu-ray, let's fix this because people.
Well, it's like the difference between a Marvel movie and then Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's like one of these things clearly had a lot more money and time invested in it. Yeah.
Everett says he understands the idea of setting subwoofer levels using an SPL meter before running auto setup. But what about all the other speakers? Is there anything to be done with an SPL meter before running auto setup for any speakers besides subwoofers? It used to be that you had to. There wasn't any auto setup. There was only you with your. When I started this game, there was no auto calibrations, and the ones that that came out, at least at first,
were very unreliable at the very beginning. Yes.
Very bad, and there was also some misunderstanding too. You would see the distance on your subwoofer be like across the street from your house, and you're like, why is the distance? And we didn't really understand what was going on, so there was some misunderstanding on our parts too. But the short answer to this is no. You don't have to do anything.
Just remember your subwoofer has its own separate amplifier with its own separate volume control, whereas the speakers, well, I suppose if you had self-powered speakers.
Right, and that's one of the reasons why we don't. And every once in a while we get that question. I think self-powered monitors are so much better than regular speakers. Why don't we have self-powered monitors? We don't have to have amplifiers in our receivers anymore. I'm like, yeah, but then you have to run,
Yeah.
Or you have to run cables to all of your speakers because it's still, well, yeah.
So, in other words,
Yes.
if there are two places to adjust the volume, one inside your AV receiver and another inside the speaker or subwoofer itself, because it has its own amplifier built into it, in that case, you probably need to adjust things before running the auto setup so that your trim levels aren't wildly out of place. But for most people where the speakers are being powered by the AV receiver, in that case, there's only one place to control the volume. That's in the AV receiver, and the auto setup will do that just fine by itself.
Mark has a theater area that opens up to its entire 1,300 square foot basement, and he has, three significantly different subwoofers: an SVS PC-2000, a Klipsch Sub 12, and a Polk PSW 505. At first, he simply put each sub in a different corner and level matched them for his main listening position. He tried adding a bit of delay and some parametric EQ via Room EQ Wizard and Mini DSP, but it was only ever okay in his main listening position. It was wildly different from seat to seat. Yep. So then he used a UMic 1 and Room EQ Wizard to measure each subwoofer one at a time. He discovered that the two subs at the front of his room were producing several large dips, so he tried moving his subs around, all trial and error, and he eventually wound up with the uniformity as good as he could get it across the three different seats. And there is a graph, and you will see that there is a suck out at 20 and then something weird going on below 20 hertz, and then things seem to go mostly together. Ups and downs are pretty uniform,
generally so, yep.
Generally speaking, except it kind of screws up.
And the levels are different. These are three different seats that we're looking at.
Yep.
But overall, he's right. The uniformity from seat to seat in terms of things going up at the same place and down at the same place. Now, there's one that's sort of around 27 hertz where one seat's going down while the other two are going up.
Right.
And then there's another just sort of, between 50 and 60 hertz where
it's really hard
two
for
of them
me
are
to see
going
this.
down
Yeah,
while
50
another
and
one is
60.
going up.
Yeah, about 54
So it's
hertz.
not ideal, but it's better than what he was describing initially, for sure.
Right. So he decided to try a recommendation for the Multi-Sub Optimizer software. This meant taking a whole bunch more measurements from each sub, from each seat, and then he fed all that into the software along with his selected target curve. And after he crunched the numbers, he remeasured across the same three seats as before. And we see something a lot more uniform. It goes pretty well. But then it really drops off after 50 hertz. It's going, actually,
but that's his target.
hertz.
I mean, that seems to be a manual target because he's clearly getting significantly more output everywhere below 50 hertz than he was before, and then now it's much higher below and then trailing off. So he must have done that as his target curve.
I that's why I said it was weird. It
Right.
should be going straight. And actually, the from 20 hertz to 45 looks pretty good. I'd be pretty happy with those results.
Yeah, I mean, there's one little wiggle right around 25 hertz.
That subwoofer, whatever the subwoofer is, that's a seat, right? Those aren't subwoofers; those are seats.
These are three different seats. Yeah.
Yeah, that seat is in the null right there. But
Little bit.
Nothing you can do with that.
Yeah, but overall, I mean, these lines overlap pretty darn well.
It's funny that those three seats, you can see that between like 22 hertz and 24 hertz. One seat's in the null, then the next seat's in a peak, and another seat next to it's in a big null. So they just kind of, this
Plus,
is exactly.
remember, he really only has one sub that plays down to 20.
Right.
The other two really don't reach down to 20. So this is not unexpected.
Right. So he also tracked the waterfall graphs just as his main listening position. And while it looks like there might be some strong ringing around 60 hertz, overall, it looks more like what we said it should be a target with rising decay times as you go lower and lower in frequency. So we got a before graph here for those of you, whatever. It looks like a terrible mountain range. And then we have an after graph here, which looks much better, but also like a mountain range. So he ran so many bass sweeps, he's started hearing them in his mind when nothing is playing, but he's feeling as though the effort was worth it, and he's enjoying the end results and a much better consistency from seat to seat. So naturally, he's wondering if there's anything he could do to improve things even further. There's still a bit of inconsistency between 20 hertz and 30 hertz. Could adding more absorption panels do anything to address that? Would upgrading one or more of his subs improve things, or is this as good as it gets? Yeah, okay, so where are the other subs played to? Because I don't remember off the top of my head where they
So that
played to.
PSW 505, that gets down to maybe 30.
Okay, so that one's not even the mix here.
And then the Klipsch gets down to a good, 26, 27 or so, but it's not real. It's certainly not getting all the way down to 20.
So this is a non-rectangular room because he says it opens to other parts. So after doing all this work, I would be honest with you. I would probably just walk away, just like go with it.
If you're not going to be buying anything, I think you're pretty much as good as this is going to get.
Yeah,
like
this
I
is
say,
as good as it's gonna get, yeah.
noticing that you've got this little bit of inconsistency from 25 hertz down to 20 hertz. I'm like, that's because you really only have one sub
playing. That's right, and that's the difference right there. That's why you have that peaks and dips from seat to seat, is because you have one sub playing that content. Would buying a second sub that can play down that low increase your consistency? And the answer is probably.
Oh yeah, you'd have a much better shot at it in any
if you're
case.
doing the kind of work that you did to get this, you would almost certainly end up with better consistency down there. And honestly, if you bought another sub, you should get rid of the other two. In my opinion, you would just use the 2 subs to do this.
But absorption panels won't help you at all this low.
No.
You're lucky if an absorption panel helps you down to 60 hertz. Below that, nothing. It's got to be multiple subs below that. So really the only thing to do at this point is to upgrade one or more of your subs.
Yeah. We have 15 minutes left and the night is out. Jaremy is the fellow with the living room setup where all the speakers and subs are in ceilings and in walls. So he was getting so much leaking noise even from his gutters outside, and rather he was considered ditching the whole setup for just one pair of really high-end speakers. Okay, and I don't think we like that idea. But the dude who asked if he could put all of his speakers in ceiling speakers, this is what that looks like.
Yes,
it looks like a checkerboard up there. Well, now he has a completely different option. In their basement, they have an enclosed 18 by 17 by 10 foot room that was intended to be their home gym. Aha! The whole famous "I'm going to have a gym that I'm going to work out in," and then never do. Jaremy already works out 5 days a week, and he's discovered that he has no interest in doing even more at home. So the gym has never been completed and never been used for almost 5 years. Sounds like a home theater to me. He talked it over with his wife, and she's agreed that he might as well turn that room into a theater.
Hooray!
Hooray! So here's the room. No. What am I looking at? Is this the room?
So there's a diagram, and then there's the room as it is right now. I don't see any
diagram. Oh, there's a diagram. Okay. So you go into the gym. It's almost square. It's got some doors or something. Is that what those things are at the bottom?
So, there's some bifold doors that are the entrance.
Okay.
At the moment, he's got mirrors installed because he was expecting this to be a gym.
I never really understood the mirrors in the gym thing.
And then, you want to look at yourself because you're all sweaty and sexy as you're working out. And then,
I am not. I am 50% of those things.
And then, what's at the back of the room is one closet door. So that's
single solitary closet door with a little chair next to it.
Yep.
All right. So he has no intention to completely rebuild the room, so it won't have. Double drywall or room within a room or any of that nonsense. But he can take down the mirrors, lay down carpet, and he's willing to cut and patch small areas of drywall for running wires and whatnot. He's also willing to take down the ceiling fan, and the only uncontrolled sources of light are the small glass block windows high on one side, which should be easy enough to cover, and the glass panes in the entry doors, which are about his only concern as far as soundproofing and light control goes. He expects to have the closet at the back, meaning the screen will be to your left when you come in through the door. He expects to have the closet at the back. The closet door at the back. So where the mirrors are right now are the front wall, right? Is that what
he's got mirrors on 2 walls, but where the TV is right now is going to be the front wall.
Oh, this is so confusing. All right, let me look at it again.
Right now, that's the front wall. There's a single door on the opposite wall. That's the back wall. That's the closet. If you look at the diagram, it's pretty clear there.
I see it. Okay, so that's the back of the wall, and then there's the TV. Oh, those are mirrors. Okay.
Yeah, there's mirrors all over the place in here.
Okay. All right. He expects to have the closet at the back, meaning the screen will be to your left when you come in through the door. He'd like to sit 12 feet from the screen, and he's leaning towards one fairly wide sectional rather than home theater recliners. So what do we think? Let me see. How big is this room? 17 by what? 18? Right?
So it's not quite 17 feet wide. It's a little hair over 18 feet long, and then it's about 10 feet tall.
Right. 17 feet. So 18 feet. So the long distance will be the depth of it, the longer one. So it'll be on the shorter wall, like we expect. Yep. So what do we think? Just looking at this room, the way it's starting point, if this were our room, what are some of the things we would want to do, and some of the things we'd want to avoid? So carpet it for sure. Get rid of the mirrors for sure.
Yep.
I think you got no problems doing it the way that you say. On the other hand, if you turn the whole thing around so that the screen is on the wall with the closet, then you
Okay.
could you could build a very shallow false wall there. Or not necessarily shallow, but build a little false wall there, and then put all your gear in the closet behind the screen.
How would you get to it?
You don't have to get to it. That's what the false wall. You don't have to get to it. Once it's back there, it's back there. It's done. Either way. So you could do it either way, or you could put it. That gives you a completely clean look, right? There's no door to look at.
Oh,
You could
I
just
see.
take the door off the hinges.
I'm not worried about a door behind me that I'm never looking at.
So either way, I would take the door. You don't necessarily have to take the door off the hinges, but you would. I would put my gear in the closet.
Okay.
I would run all the wires to all the speakers that you're going to have. And he said that he can do the drywall patching and all that stuff himself.
He's willing to do drywall patching and all that himself. Yep.
To me, you're going to sit 12 feet. I think that sounds okay.
Sounds very reasonable.
I would have a nice projection screen set
yeah.
up here. There's no reason to have anything but a fixed frame on the wall if you're going to do it that way. Put your speakers. You could do freestanding. You could do on walls or in walls. I would not. I would do freestanding because it just.
Oh yeah. I always go. I don't bother with the in wall and the in ceiling stuff. I'm like, I want my stuff surface mounted. Don't worry about soundproofing that way. You can move things if you need to.
10 feet tall, he said? 10 feet tall,
10 feet
right?
tall. Plenty
That's
of space.
pretty tall space.
Plenty of
So
space.
you could do in ceilings, or I think he's already had a bad experience with in ceiling speakers.
Yeah, he doesn't
so
want them,
maybe just get the Focal little birds for the ceiling, the Focal birds for the surrounds and surround backs, and then up front, pick your poison. Everything else will play nice with the birds. So
Yeah, but the only thing I'm going to question in here is whether I want different screen sizes and shapes as an option.
nah, he's not going to want that.
He's asked about screens anyway, so we can talk about it then.
Okay. But no, it seems pretty good. He's trying to decide on screen size, and one of the things that concerns him is having enough room for his front speakers. He's thinking he might go for a 150-inch screen, but then was concerned that such a large screen might force his left and right speakers too close to the corners. One idea was floated to him by an installer friend would be use 3 horizontal center speakers. That way all 3 could go above or below the screen without worrying about how much space is available on either side, what we would recommend. Okay. We've already had non-standard setups in your house, and you don't like them. Stop listening to people who tell you to do stuff like that.
That's how you ended up with everything in the walls to begin with. Yeah.
That's how you ended up with the system that you are now abandoning downstairs or upstairs or wherever that place is. So, no, I don't agree with that at all. First of all, you're going to be sitting 12 feet away from a 150-inch screen. That sounds big.
That's big. 135 would get you the 45-degree field of view that I would personally want.
I would not go bigger than... I would not go 150. I think 150 sounds too large.
135 is really nice because that is also exactly 10 feet wide. Yeah. And you've got a not quite 17-foot wide room, so you got a good 3 feet on either side, which is plenty to put speakers on either side of a 135-inch screen. I'd go 135 in here all day long.
If you are really questioning this, then go to a movie theater, sit in your preferred seat, and then count the ceiling tiles. During the count the ceiling tiles from you to up there, and then the ceiling tiles across, as long as they're square, and then do the ratio there, and then figure out how many feet you are, and then how many feet across it should be in order to get that same ratio. And I doubt you're going to get one 150-inch screen.
But also, nothing in here is forcing him to lock his seats exactly 12 feet away.
No,
you could scooch them a little. Their seats, you could scooch them a little closer if that's what
I
you
would
want.
do 135 and then give yourself plenty of room on either side for your speakers. And then if you're like, I want the screen to be a little bit bigger, then move the couch.
Move the couch a little bit closer, yeah. I mean, you have the room in here, you could do a false wall, acoustically transparent screen, center exactly behind the middle of the screen, even your front left, right's behind the screen if you really wanted to, but... I mean, he's talking about he wants to save some money a little bit later on. I'm like, that's all getting kind of unnecessary. So 135, there's space for your speakers all around that. If you want it a bit bigger, scoot your seat closer.
So he doesn't want to go crazy with the budget. There you go. And would prefer to save money wherever possible. Would it make sense to go with a silver ticket screen? Any reason to consider some sort of specialty screen with a gray material or fancy? No. This is going to be a light control room. Go with silver ticket. Just walk away. That's what I would do.
You're going to want to cover that small amount of windows that you've got up there, which that shouldn't be just some blinds could cover that.
Yeah.
And then you've got these the lights in your doors to the entryway, but I mean you could put a curtain over your entry, or you could replace those doors. Yeah. So light controlled, silver ticket would be absolutely fine. The only question is if you want masking, but that's a lot of extra money. A lot of extra money.
Yeah, I don't think so. Gaming and movies in 4K and HDR are priorities. What are our thoughts on a JVC versus a Sony projector in here? Cost is one of the big considerations, and what's your priorities? So, I mean, yes, you say that 4K and HDR and gaming and movies are all priorities.
Yep.
So that's pretty much all the things that there are. So do you care about wobble versus not wobble? Because you can save a lot of money going with wobble.
Mm-hmm.
Do you care about absolute black levels? Do you care about latency? Do you care about, what is the most important? Because that's all of the things.
Well, I mean, really, it comes down to the JVCs have deeper black levels. For HDR, I think they look better because they've got the higher contrast, the natively higher contrast. So the little bright thing right next to the very dark thing looks more contrasty on a JVC. So if you say HDR is a priority, there's that. The only thing you're giving up is that it wobbles to do the 4K instead of being genuine 4K. The Sony, I mean, the 385 is a beautiful projector, but it's $8,000 versus $4,500 for the X790. So if you're looking to not go crazy on the budget, I think the JVC wins here.
Yeah, the room is going to be at a theater. This room is going to be the theater. So the theater setup in this living room is going to go away. As such, that's got a lot of holes in the ceiling. He intends to use the Marantz AV7704 and Emotiva XPA11 that he already owns to power a 7.2.4 setup. He absolutely does not want in-wall or in-ceiling speakers this time. He's done a bit of auditioning so far. He's liked the Revel Performa 3 speakers. He liked them a bit more than the Paradigm Prestige speakers and a fair bit more than the more expensive B&W speakers he listened to. Should he just go with Revels? Yeah, go with Revels. Well, if he likes them,
I want him to audition the ones that he can return for free.
Well, yeah, you could do that too. But honestly, at this point, if this guy's already he's been once burned. You know what I mean? So
yeah, but it seems like he's only considering store brands, right?
That's true.
Audition some Aperia and Varus Grands because you can return them for free shipping both ways. Audition some SVS Ultras because you can return them for free. I would like you to audition some Ascend speakers because I think they're really, really good and they might float your boat, but they are not free to return. You do have to pay return shipping on those.
So, yes, but I still think that you don't need to go with Revels all around.
Right.
I think for your surrounds and your overheads can all be from the Focal line that we've been talking about.
Because those are really convenient for being on your wall and on your ceiling with a fully pivotable mount and very easy to mount.
Yeah.
Although I will say, Revel does have good on-wall speakers that I would be happy to recommend. So if you want to stay all Revel, you can definitely do that with them. Because not everybody does, right? There are some brands where I'm like, I don't like their on-wall speakers, but Revel I do, so that's okay.
But there is no reason why you can't listen to some of these other speakers as well. So
sure.
if
and it could end up being like Prime Satellites or Prime Elevation speakers could be what he mounts, right?
Sure.
For SVS, that could easily work.
Yeah. So his living room subwoofers were in walls. He won't be doing that again, so he needs new subs. Which ones and how many and where would you position them? Front left corner, rear right corner.
Wouldn't you go front right corner, rear left in here because the doors are in the front left?
Doesn't matter. I'm not even looking at the stupid picture.
You could also just do the midpoints of the two side walls. That'll work in here just fine.
No, isn't the door in the midpoint of one of the side walls?
No, the door is in front of the midpoint, and the seats are going to be behind the midpoint. If you went cylinders, so first of all, honestly, SVS 2000 series is perfect for this size room. It's about 3,000 cubic feet. That's on the very low end of a large room or the very high end of a medium-sized room.
Yeah.
2000 series is ideal. I'm going to say go cylinders. They save on floor space. If you put them at the midpoints of your two side walls, even if someone brushes against them, they're not going to cut their shin on a sharp corner or anything, being a cylinder and kind of soft. PC 2000 cylinders, two of them, either the mid-side walls or diagonally opposite corners.
I agree.
Woo!
That's it, right?
It's got to be. You said you need to go.
Yeah. I already scrolled up. I can't remember if there was another question after that.
Oh, there's
but
lots
yes.
of questions, so I'm going to mention. Okay, so quickly here we got Chad, who has asked quite a few questions. Joseph, Mark, scrolling, trolling, just Jay. That is Jay. Terry G, Heath B, scrolling, trolling, Travis, and Monty. And then we had some questions from Infinite Gary, which we might or might not get to.
Oh, okay.
Wow, that's a lot. But we'll get to them next week. You're up next week, guys.
We will get to you next week. That's right. Once again, we want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Stephen, Jaremy, and Joseph for going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and leaving us a PayPal donation.
Yeah, Stephen, Jaremy, Joseph, thank you very much for those donations.
So I want to thank our 61 patrons over at patreon.com.
Patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Thanks so much to our 61 patrons.
And we want to thank Jason, Kris, and James. Jason let SVS know. He talked to SVS about his subwoofer purchase. Kris is going to be donating an Istion hub to one of our lucky listeners. And James is making me something with my new business's logo on it at fearlessmobileclimbing.com. You can visit it.
For sure. Kris, James, thanks for supporting the podcast. And Jason, congrats on that PC-2000 subwoofer purchase. I hope the feeling in your toes comes back.
Right. Okay, for AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.